Okay, so one of the things that we want to do is provide financial inclusion to Filipinos globally, because if you look at why we exist as a company, okay, it's not really for a lot of different things, okay? It's to provide access to financial services to people who are often excluded from the financial sector. So we'll give you an example. 10% of Philippines' GDP, it comes from overseas workers sending remittances back home.
Right.
But the problem for Filipinos is that when they go back home, they find access to financial services very, very difficult, because banks don't look at the money you sent over when you were abroad, which is terrible. Instead, they actually look at the money that was generated within the Philippines. Now, for a lot of people who've been making such a big contribution to the Philippines economy, we think that's grossly unfair. But the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is aware of this, because it's not for the want of trying, okay? The problem with the Philippines is that it's a very fragmented country with a lot of different islands, and unfortunately implementing a set of rules is very, very difficult across the board. And the Philippines government is aware of this, okay? And that's why they launched these initiatives to encourage financial technology organizations like us. So we're a fintech organization. We're really a technology company. And we use our technology to be able to facilitate overseas remittances at zero cost to the sender, okay? So you're probably wondering, well, what does this mean for me? And what this means for you is very, very simple, okay? One of our big aims as an organization that aims to provide financial inclusion services to overseas workers globally is that they often need to access credit services. Now you're probably thinking, well, credit services, we often go to loan sharks for this. And yeah, people often do go to loan sharks, but what's the problem with loan sharks? Anybody know? Can anybody raise their hands? What's the problem with loan sharks?
Too much interest.
Interest is too high? Anything else? So you're talking about 100, 200%, sometimes even higher, which is shit. Okay, anything else? What are the other problems with loan sharks? Too many which? Yeah. They sometimes change the rates.
Yes,
so when you go back to pay the remainder of the money, sometimes they change from the rate. That's a big one. It's an unlicensed industry. Because it's an unlicensed industry, nobody is there to regulate them. So if something goes wrong, what's the problem? If something goes wrong, what's the problem? There's nobody you can go to. You can go to the police, but the police will then say to you, well, why did you trust this person to begin with? So that's the problem. The police can't do anything, the regulators can't do anything. When you go with a company that's regulated and licensed, you have regulators that can take action. Now you're probably wondering, why does this apply to Mumcash? Okay, who knows why this applies to Mumcash?
We have license.
We are licensed. Who are we licensed by? BSP. And we're also regulated by and the Securities and Exchange Commission. That's a very big thing. We're also recognized by the Department of Finance for our contribution to inward remittance flows within the Philippines, which is a very big deal. So we have a few different types of licenses. One of them is a type A remittance license. Yes?
Question, when did the Mumcash started the business?
That's a very good question, okay? Now, we've actually been in operation since 2016 as a fintech, okay? As a financial technology organization, okay? Now, as a financial technology organization, we were facilitating overseas remittances for the bigger companies within the Philippines, within Hong Kong and Worldwide House. Now, what's the problem with that? So we were reducing their costs in the hope that they would provide those savings and pass those savings to the customers. Now, did they pass those savings on to the customers? No. Can anybody guess what they did with those savings?
Pay for the advertisement.
Not only that, but they used it to make more profit.
Yeah.
They kept it for themselves.
They lend again to another person.
Oh no, they didn't lend it. Okay, they actually kept it for themselves.
Kept for them.
They
Correct.
invested to other
Basically, yeah.
Yes.
So that's why actually we made the decision in September 2019 to actually move into the customer-facing side of things. Okay, because we had the technology, because we had the app, because we had all these different things, we made the decision. You want to know what? We can actually provide these services to overseas Filipino workers directly. They don't need to go through these remittance organizations or these remittance houses. Why do that when you can actually come to us directly? So it was actually planned for a long time. This wasn't just something we decided to go like this. But we did expedite it because a few different people asked us, was starting a business during the pandemic a very good time? So we actually started Mumcash on February 8th. That was our first day, February the 8th. Okay? And after February the 8th, 2020. Okay? And after we did that, this is where it starts to get really, really cool. Okay? So a few people asked us, well, why did you start it during the pandemic? We just said, well, in terms of going for extra saving services and earning services, actually now is the best possible time to start a business. Now is the time when those services are needed the most. And when you look at the problems customers face, we were capable of addressing those problems directly through our technology, through our license, and through our payout channels. And that's why we decided, you want to know what? Let's make this happen, and let's make this happen as an organization. So we were gradually building towards where we are today, and the reason we actually got a place that's privately owned is that we can actually hold seminars and stuff like that, and it provides you guys a place where you can sit down, relax. If you want to just talk to a few people, you can do that. But the other thing we are launching today is, well, we launched it yesterday. We sort of announced it directly yesterday. We haven't announced it on Facebook yet, but we are officially starting our Mumcash lending services, the Mumcash loan services. I know! So, you're probably wondering why that matters, okay? And what makes Mumcash different as an organization for lending, okay? Number one, your interest rates are going to be very low, okay? So we'll be announcing that very soon, okay? We will be announcing that very, very soon. So there will be low interest rates. And the other thing that's really good is that you're not going to have an unrealistic payment schedule. It won't be like, okay, I'll give it to you, but you have to give it back to me in 1 week and you have to pay 100% interest. Got it? Okay? So
That's
what
great.
we are going to do is we are going to make it accessible to you with a very lenient repayment schedule, in that it means that you are going to be able to afford it and it's going to be comfortable for you. You will be placed under no financial duress. That's something that's very important to us, because when people take out loans, they're often placed under enormous pressure to pay them back. We're not going to apply pressure. We simply want it to be available to people when they need them. So how are we going to calculate it, okay? How much you can borrow, okay? Because there will naturally be a couple of borrowing limits and different people will have different borrowing limits. So that is related to your credit rating. So how do we calculate your credit rating, okay? The way we calculate that is, number one, the amount of profit you have in your account. So it's a multiple of the amount of profit you have in your account. That's number one. So it might be 2 or 3 times, okay? And secondly, it is going to be calculated off a few different things. So for example, have you been active with Mumcash? Have you been topping up regularly? Do you have a stable income? But we also look at a third type, okay? And the third type that we look at is social credit. So when we talk about social credit, what do we mean? Has this person been referring people in Mumcash? Have they been making a really valid attempt to bring people in? And if they have been, great. Then that means that even if their profit is low, but they've been making an enormous contribution, that they will be able to access a higher credit limit. Just because they are, as far as we see it, they're trustworthy and capable of paying it back in a way that is comfortable to them. Because everybody falls under these situations, and it's important to be ready for them. And that's why we say keep a certain amount of profit in your account, meaning that if the time comes, that you'll be able to access that as a loan service. So people have these things where it's just like, number one, there might be a tuition expense that they need to pay, but they might not have the money. Number two, there might be an unexpected medical expense. That's unfortunately a very big one. Because sometimes people are uninsured, or sometimes people don't want to access their insurance funds in the Philippines. So that's why we want to provide them with a facility to be able to pay those back pretty much immediately, okay? So that is very, very important, that people have access to those different things. And that it is made in a way that is done that same day, okay? If it is done that same day, then that means that they are going to be able to get it and take care of that urgent need in a way that is manageable to them. So we'll be releasing more information about that this coming week. But we're doing something actually to promote this week and show how it works. Okay, because a lot of you weren't here for the last talk, so I'll be doing one probably every hour. Okay, so we need a volunteer. Who wants to be a volunteer?
For what?
So, I'm not going to reveal the secret yet, am I?
Here, in your box.
Come on up.
No. I'm not raising up for a volunteer.
Okay.
I will just ask a question.
Yeah, what's the question?
Yeah.
Because I encountered a lot of friends who say, oh, Mumcash is a fraud, that's a scam.
So when people say those different things, okay? A few of the different things. So number one, ask with them. Ask them initially. Why are they under that impression? Okay?
So could we have a picture of this sex license? Sorry.
So our SEC license is available directly. The regulation it comes from our subsidiary company, which is PHILS.TAKE. Okay? That is available online. So that is, all of it is available online. E-Trans, E-T-R-A-N-S-S. Correct. E-Trans International Remittance Corporation.
Thank you.
So all that is available completely online. You can see Timoteo actually doing interviews with ABS-CBN. Our interviews are available online. We've been featured across the Manila Bulletin. We've been featured across the Manila Bulletin, the Manila Times, sorry, the Philippine Bulletin, the Manila Inquirer, lots of different organizations, Business Week, or sorry, Business World, I forget which one. But we've been featured across a lot of Philippine outlets. We've been on Yahoo News. We've been all over the place in terms of what we do and in terms of recognition. Because we're one of the first companies in the world to actually get a full central bank BCE license, and we were heavily recognized for that. So when people have those different questions, all you need to do is show them the actual media coverage. And if they still have doubts after that, well, it's their loss.
Yeah.
That's the overall thing. We're never going to get defensive. It's just like, well, why do you think that? We're never going to do that. You know?
Doubt I earn. Doubt I earn.
Exactly, and that's the overall thing. We had another. I'll put it this way. We had another organization that were very, very jealous in Hong Kong. Can anyone guess who they are?
Secret.
It's a secret, but it rhymes with ONG.
TNG.
Oh, actually, TNG are fine. Actually, I got no problem with TNG as an organization. Actually, no, I've got no problem with TNG as an organization. It's another organization that wear ugly jackets.
Yeah. But we're waiting for